news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. President Trump is rebuilding his tariff wall. In his biggest move yet, the U.S. will collect duties of 10 to 12.5% on about 5 dozen trading partners. That's after investigations into alleged failure to keep forced labor out of their supply chains. Senior policy analyst Nathan Dean with Bloomberg Intelligence.
He converted what is known as a Section 122 tariff, where he was somewhat limited in what they could do, and he converted it into what's known as a Section 301 tariff. Now, what the investors should note is under a Section 301 tariff, in this case for forced labor, President Trump now has a tool that's on firmer legal ground. So you're not going to see a repeat of the Supreme Court trying to curtail his powers here.
Bloomberg senior policy analyst Nathan Dean on Bloomberg Intelligence. Dartmouth College professor of economics Douglas Irwin tells Bloomberg News President Trump's new tariffs are on stronger legal ground.
They probably will be challenged in the courts, but it's not clear that the courts will overturn them. So these tariffs are probably here to stay for some time.
Dartmouth College professor of economics Douglas Irwin on Bloomberg TV. Measles infections in the U.S. have now reached a 35-year high. This year's cases have already outpaced last year's total, with more than 2,300 confirmed infections in 43 states and Washington, D.C. The decline of state mandates that all children be inoculated before starting school has led to some communities falling below vaccination rates of 90%, which is the minimum needed for herd immunity, which would protect everyone from the virus's spread. Measles is a highly contagious disease that can lead to dangerous complications. The U.S. and Iran have exchanged limited strikes as the latest round of hostilities passed the 2-week mark after President Trump told Axios that he is close to deciding on whether to launch a massive attack against Iran. He is also warning of, quote, major military punishment against Iran and its Houthi proxies in Yemen, now that the militant group has begun targeting commercial ships in the Red Sea. Wayne Sanders is a senior defense research analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence.
This is something that I've been keeping a close eye on because I was actually worried that this was going to be a pressure point that was going to be pressed by Iran and by the Houthis. And now you're starting to see that as part of Iran's strategy going forward right now as an additional lever against the U.S.
Retired Colonel Wayne Sanders was a guest on Bloomberg Surveillance. Wall Street wrapping up a jittery week with stocks now inching higher. We check markets for you all day long here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is up 0.6%. NASDAQ up 0.2%. The Dow up 0.7%. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.65%. The 2-year yield at 4.31%. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index is nearly 3% lower, led by Micron, which is now down more than 5%. Intel shares are more than 4% lower after the chipmaker delivered a revenue forecast that shattered Wall Street expectations. American Express raised its full-year revenue forecast to 10%, but saw its expenses surge 12% last quarter on premium advertising. Ben Elliott covers credit cards for Bloomberg Intelligence and says higher card fee growth creates some optimism for the Amex forecast.
They raise people's card fees when they renew their card, right? So that's kind of on a rolling basis, and they're still raising card fees from the previous refresh of the Amex Plat. So that's going to keep rolling into P&L through next year, and that will make some of the elevated expenses look more palatable to investors, I think.
Bloomberg's Ben Elliott with Bloomberg Intelligence. American Express shares now more than 5% lower. We are just days away from the Fed's July meeting, and with the war escalating and crude oil prices near $100 a barrel, the debate is on about whether we'll see a hike or a hold next week. Bloomberg's Michael McKee says some are making the case for raising rates.
You can find the votes for it if you're looking, because there are enough members of the Open Market Committee who have either said raise rates or will raise rates if inflation doesn't come down. And the case for inflation not coming down is growing at this point.
Bloomberg's Mike McKee reports investors are pricing in close to 2 rate hikes before this year is over, but economists surveyed by Bloomberg don't see any move before a rate cut in the middle of next year. SpaceX hopes today is the day for the latest Starship rocket flight after bad weather scrubbed yesterday's test launch from Starbase, Texas. Today's launch window opens at 5:45 this evening Central Time. SpaceX shares now 4.5% lower. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with President Trump in D.C. on Tuesday. The Prime Minister's office says Netanyahu will attend the funeral of late Senator Lindsey Graham and that the visit is at Trump's invitation. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.